Good morning, Bobby. We'll just give it a few more seconds and we'll go ahead and we'll get started here shortly. Just want to see if anyone else will jump on. Let's just make sure. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started. Good morning, everybody. My name is Joshua Boatman, and I am the Regional Technology Director for the Ohio Valley region. Thank you for attending today's class. I believe we are covering opportunities. So it's typically, this class typically runs about an hour, and we kind of just do a quick deep dive into just all the different functions within opportunities. I will tell you there is some crossover with some of the other classes we teach. So for instance, yesterday I taught contact to close, and we talk about opportunities within that. So there will be some crossover of that information. If you have any questions throughout the class, please feel free to raise your hand, shout them out, use the chat, whatever makes the most sense. And we'll kind of go from there. So without further ado, let me try to share my screen. It's always the scary part. All right. Hopefully everyone is seeing my screen, and we'll kind of just jump into it. So you can see today I'm logged into Command. That's where Opportunities is located. And the first thing I always like to point out with every Command class that I ever teach, I always like to point out the red KW in the upper left-hand corner. So the red KW, when you click on it, it does expand the names of all the different applets we have within Command. I'm not a visual person. I like words. So that way I can easily identify contacts and opportunities and campaigns and all that good stuff. So today we're going to spend most of our time within opportunities. Now, the one thing before we really even deep dive into opportunities, I always like to mention we do have integrations with Dot Loop and Docusign. So if you want to be able to utilize those platforms with opportunities, you're going to want to make sure that you actually connect those different platforms under the settings option. If you have any questions about that, please feel free to reach out, or definitely reach out to your Director of Agent Services, your Market Center Tech Trainer located within your Market Center, and they can definitely kind of get you in the right direction. So let's kind of just dive into opportunities. So when we click on opportunities, this is going to take us into our pipeline. Out of most opportunities in Command, or I would say applets within Command, we have a lot of cool ones. We have contacts, tasks, smart plans. Opportunities is probably one of the most important, if not the most important, because typically, ultimately, this is generally how you're going to get paid, right? If you do not put in your opportunity, if you do not submit your compliance request, if you do not submit your commissions, depending upon the Market Center, 99% of the time, your transaction will not get processed and you won't get paid. So that's kind of a big deal in a lot of people's lives. So we're going to spend a few moments. We're going to kind of just walk through the opportunity pipeline, and just kind of give you an idea of what we're seeing. So you'll notice the first thing we have are 3 separate opportunities: listings, buyers, and leases. So the listings pipeline is going to be for any active properties you may have. The buyers pipeline is going to be for buyers, and then leases will contain both landlords, where you're helping someone rent out their property, or tenants, where you're helping someone to rent a property. The biggest thing to kind of keep in mind with every pipeline, and generally with any type of transaction in real estate, there's always going to be 5 phases that a transaction will always go through. Now, you very well may only spend a small amount of time within each phase, but in all cases, a transaction does go through these 5 phases: cultivate, appointment, active, under contract, and closed. A lot of times you may just jump immediately into the appointment phase, but at one point you did do some kind of cultivate. Now, what you're going to notice with each phase, there's going to be a number below it. That's actually going to show us how many opportunities or transactions we have under that phase. So for instance, under active, I have 5 active properties within that phase. Under contract, I have 2. Appointment, I have 1. You're going to notice below that, we're going to see a volume count. Now, this is going to give us the volume that if all these properties close, this is what our expected sales volume is. Now, we'll talk about where that number comes from, but I kind of just want to point that out because a lot of times that is a guess that you've kind of decided that, hey, this is probably what we're going to list it at, or for buyers, this is going to be based upon what you believe their budget to be. That number can change throughout the life of a transaction, and it's extremely easy to do just that. The average time, this is going to be the average amount of time opportunities actually live within this phase. So the longer an opportunity stays here, the time counts up. And then, does the average based upon how many opportunities, how long each one stays. Did it stay in this phase for 2 days, 3 days, 5 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? And that can just be a good indicator for you to know if you're struggling either to move a transaction forward or if you're having transactions that are staying in the appointment phase, but you're not actually getting them to the active phase, if you're on a team especially, or if you're on the PC program within your market center, you can definitely talk to your PC or engage a MAPS coach and just say, hey, here's where I seem to be struggling. To the end of each pipeline, we have what we call our potential income and our probable income. The potential income is going to be the value that, based upon the commission rate you entered into the opportunity when you created it, in conjunction with whatever the sales volume you entered in for that opportunity, this is the maximum amount of money you can make. So if you think about a perspective of, you always think you're putting in 3% for commission, right? You're going to get 3% on every sale. And if you sell and close every single property within our pipeline, so here you can see I have a couple properties at a couple different commission volumes. Some of them probably aren't at true 3%. Potentially, this could put $41,000 in GCI in my pocket. Probable is basically going to be what you could make based upon your conversion rates. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we actually kind of go into the individual phases of an opportunity. But I just kind of want to point out those two different numbers. Potential is, this is if you close 100% of your transactions in your pipeline. Probable is going to be if you close them based upon your conversion rate. And we have that for 3 separate pipelines. Further down, we can kind of see our ratio and our activity. So our ratio is just going to always kind of show us a total breakdown of where our business is made up, right? So if we look at our pipeline currently, you can see I have 8 listings, I have 8 buyers. So I have a 50-50 split and I have nothing in the leases. And then it's going to give us a quick summary, just what we saw up here, right? Probable, potential. With listings, I have a probable income of 34 or 35K. With buyers, it's a little over 25K. Potentially, it's a little bit higher. So if everything closes based upon my conversion rate amongst my 8 or my 16 transactions, I should say, I have about $60,000 in GCI coming to me. And if I close everything, once again, a little over 86K. The activity here is just a quick metric for you to kind of gauge, how many opportunities you're creating at any given time, right? How many opportunities do you have sitting in your pipeline on each month, right? This is a rotating 12-month period. So you can see back in June of last year, I had 5 listing opportunities. I switched it to listing, right? And then I maintained 5 in July, 5 in August, and all of a sudden I created a new one in September. And then I created one in October, created one in November, and then maybe I started to close some opportunities. So it's just kind of a metric that kind of just lays out your actual business activity in just a visual way. The other thing you're going to see down here at the bottom is going to be our closing tracker. So here we're going to see closings this month. So this is going to be based upon the close date we plug in when we create an opportunity. This kind of like when we know, hey, we've moved into the closing phase, this opportunity now has a closing date. We can kind of foresee what closings we have ahead of us. Super cool, super important. But just also keep in mind, this is determined based upon the closing date. So if the closing date for some reason gets moved within the opportunity and you do not adjust it, it's not going to automatically know to move it to the next month. So if you're supposed to close at the end of the month and it gets pushed, say, into May, and you don't update that within the opportunity, when it gets to May, it's not going to show a potential closing. Just kind of want to put that out there for you. Super cool, super simple, super easy. From this main page here, when we want to create an opportunity, it's going to be pretty easy. We're just going to hit the create opportunity button. And this is going to bring up our create opportunity screen. Now, a couple things I want to point out here. You're going to have a market center drop down. For 99% of you, you're only going to have one market center in this list. I have multiple market centers because of my role within the region, but the only time you very well may have multiple market centers could very well be if you are transferring from one market center to the next. You will have both of those market centers in there as you finish up your business within one market center to join another one. If that ever is a case, just kind of file this in your back pocket. You always want to make sure you want to create new opportunities under the market center that you're joining, right? So your new opportunities can start to be processed under that. Other cases you may see multiple market centers would be if you're licensed in multiple states with multiple Keller Williams, right? So here in Ohio, where I'm from, a lot of agents like to be also licensed in Florida. So if you were tied into a Florida market center there, you would use the same command. But when you create opportunities, you just want to make sure, hey, this is a Florida opportunity, so I'm going to select that Florida market center. Hopefully that makes a little bit of sense. To the right, we're going to see the team drop down. The team drop down would only be available if you, in fact, are on a team. So you would be able to drop it down and select your team name that help determine if you're creating a personal opportunity or a team opportunity. If you are on a team and you have the ability to create your own private opportunities and team opportunities, it's always a great conversation to have with your rainmaker or the director of operations, just to make sure that, hey, we're creating all opportunities running in through the team, correct? There's no personal opportunities and personal command. Everything gets ran through the team. Typically, the answer is yes. Opportunity type. This is extremely important. And you're going to notice this kind of correlates to the various pipelines, right? So listing opportunity would appear in the listings pipeline. Buyer opportunity would appear within the buyer's pipeline. And then landlord tenant opportunities would appear within the leases. This is something you really want to pay attention to when you go to create an opportunity. If you happen to select the wrong opportunity type and you start the process of creating the opportunity, you're sending signatures out, you're pulling in your compliance, you're doing all the things, we cannot switch opportunity types. So if you accidentally start a buyer opportunity out as a listing, it's going to live in the listing pipeline unless you archive it out and recreate that opportunity under the buyer's pipeline. Ultimately, it doesn't affect too much. It can affect some reporting, especially when you start to think of the makeup of your business. It'll say, hey, this was a listing versus a buyer, which, you want to be accurate with that, what your business makeup is for goal setting. So just pay extra attention to this. For the purposes of our class, as we kind of walk through this, I'm just going to create a listing opportunity. And then client is just going to be someone within your database. So one of the things just to note, before you can ever create an opportunity, you in fact do have to have a contact in command. So you have to create that contact within the contact applet in command, and then you can create that opportunity. So let's type in, I'm sure I have an Abby in here. Oh, we'll do Gabby. So here I'm going to type in and I'm going to select Gabby. Co-seller would be, if there's a co-seller on this property, they also must live within your database, but this is how you can associate multiple sellers and or multiple buyers to a single opportunity. You're going to notice as I selected opportunity type and client that it kind of created that opportunity name for me. This is something you can change later, and you're definitely going to want to talk to your market center leadership to find out if they have a recommended naming convention for this. So sometimes for listings, most MCAs, they want, the address, and then you can always put the seller's name on the end if you want. But definitely check with your market center, see what their preferred naming convention is. One note with this, while we actually won't go through and create a transaction through Dot Loop or DocuSign, whatever you type in for the opportunity name, if you create that transaction from within Dot Loop, within DocuSign, that's going to be the name of that Dot Loop or that DocuSign room. Custom tags, we'll dive into just a little bit, but think of custom tags within opportunities as a way for you to identify certain things of what that's going on with the opportunity. I'll actually talk about some custom tags that I've recommended for some teams towards the end of the class that you can also use if you're a solo agent within a business. That might help you kind of manage and track your transaction through opportunities. But just suffice to say, a custom tag, these function just like contact tags, which it's just a way for you to assign a data point to an opportunity that you can filter by later. All right, and then your estimated close date. So this is not a required field, but this does set precedents, especially with like the closing calendar down at the bottom we mentioned earlier, specific close dates in the future. If you know it, if you have an estimate, go ahead and plug it in. If not, it's not that big of a deal. We can change it later. And then you'll notice the last three things that are required are commission rate, opportunity stage, and opportunity phase. Commission rate typically is 3%. If you know that this, for instance, this listing is not going to be 3%, you already know it's going to be 2.75 or whatever it is, or maybe it's 4%, who knows? Go ahead and plug that in. We can adjust that later. You're going to notice the estimated list price is not required, but this is important if you want that GCI, potential probable income, to calculate. If we don't put in an estimated list price, even if we don't know what we're going to list it at, maybe we'll adjust it later, that's great. But we have to put in an estimated list price or an estimated budget if this was a buyer opportunity, because that's how the opportunity pipeline is going to calculate that potential and probable income. And then we have our phases here. So you're going to notice we have cultivate, appointment, active. Cultivate, appointment, and active is right here. You'll notice we cannot select under contract or closed. From the beginning, we cannot create an opportunity and automatically put it in the under contract phase or the closed phase. It has to live in one of the three initial phases first. If you just know ultimately it's going to go active and I don't need to move it to appointment because I've already, signed a listing agreement, I just didn't create it as an appointment, that's okay. You can just select active. And then depending upon the phase you select here, over here on the right-hand side will be the various stages that you can select. So to give you an idea, if I click cultivate, I have three phases I can put it, or three stages I can put it in: watch, nurture, hot. And if I go to active, staging, showing, negotiations, a new stage name that I must have created from a previous class. So we can sit there and we can just say, let's plug it into cultivate, and we'll put it under hot. We'll go ahead and click create. Super simple, super easy. So we're in an actual opportunities settings right now, and opportunities details. This is where we can go through and change various parts of an opportunity. To get to this screen, all you have to do from the pipeline itself is locate a particular opportunity. So let's say we go to cultivate. We see our opportunity created. Actually, you know what? I did listing, didn't I? Let's go to listing. We see the opportunity we created. And then to access the details, we can just click on the opportunity name. We can click the three little dots and click view details if we want. So we're just going to go ahead and click on the name. So this is going to take us into the actual opportunity details itself. So we're going to notice we have a bunch of tabs across the top. We'll start with details. And this is where we can kind of edit any of that information we entered when we created the opportunity. You're going to notice to the right of each section, there's a little pencil to edit that particular section. So under general information, if we click the pencil, this is where we can change the name of the opportunity. Here we can add a co-seller or change the name if we wrote in the wrong Gabby, or if there's multiple contacts, or if I created it with the wrong contact, I can associate this opportunity somewhere else. You're going to notice though, I cannot change the market center. So since I selected this market center when I created the opportunity, I cannot change it to a different market center. I would have to recreate this opportunity to associate it with a different market center. Here I can switch between the phases and the stages. The biggest difference being once I created an opportunity and I put it in one of the 3 initial phases, I now have the ability to immediately move it to under contract or closed. Time frame is going to be more of something that is just for your own benefit. When do you, if you think within the cultivate phase, when do you think they're going to close? When do you think it's going to close? When are they going to write an offer? You can kind of plug that information in. And then we're going to see a set of dates here. Now, these dates are extremely important if you want to take advantage of the goal settings within Command. One of our classes, we talk about reports and goal settings. So if you're interested in that, definitely make sure you sign up and attend that. But a lot of that hinges on these particular dates. So if you know an estimated close date, plug it in. But then we have our appointment scheduled and our appointment date. So this is one of those things I always like to take a little bit of time with to explain. Appointment scheduled is not the day of the appointment. So if I have an appointment scheduled for tomorrow, April 13th, I don't put appointment scheduled and select April 13th. Appointment scheduled, this is the day I schedule the appointment, right? So if I'm talking to my client today and we're scheduling an appointment for tomorrow, I'm going to select appointment scheduled on April 12th. And then after I successfully hold that appointment, I met with the client, we did whatever we needed to do, we had our initial consultation, whatever it is, then I put the appointment date. Only after I've successfully have held the appointment, I select that date. So if it's the 13th, I would then select the 13th. This is important when we definitely talk about goal settings, because one of the things Command will slowly help you do as you input your data is track your conversion rate. And one of the conversion rates that you kind of need to know within your business is how many appointments do you schedule versus actually how many of those appointments do you actually have? No real estate agent in the history of the world always gets every appointment. They may schedule an appointment, they don't always get to actually have that appointment. Inevitably, there's always clients that are going to like say, oh, you know what, I'm busy. Oh, wait, something else happened. Hey, I just lost my job. I can't sell my house now, or I can't look to buy another house, whatever it is. You may schedule an appointment, but you may not actually always have that appointment. Sometimes on a listing, they might be interviewing multiple agents. And before you even get to your chance to do your listing appointment, they've already selected another agent. Or more than likely, all of a sudden, their cousin's brother, sister's uncle got a real estate license, and now they're going to list with them. So just kind of want to differentiate that. Agreement 1, this is going to be when they actually have signed the agreement. So if you're on a listing presentation and we had a listing presentation tomorrow, we successfully had our appointment, and they signed that day, I could also put agreement 1 on the 13th. It's perfectly okay. And then contract date is going to be, when did the property go under contract? When did we successfully pin this property? And maybe it's on the 27th. And then of course the close date is going to be, when is this bad boy closing? When are we scheduled to close? I'm going to plug that in as well. All these dates are extremely important. This is how the goal setting tracks within Command. If you're interested in that, super, super cool. Estimated list price, once again, this is just whatever we can plug in. If later we know it's only $375,000 and maybe it's a 2.5% conversion rate, that's perfectly okay. Or commission rate, we can go ahead and hit save. And that's just going to update that information. Can change it at any given time. Always just make sure it's under the detail section. Property over to the right is extremely important. This is where you're going to associate this opportunity with a physical address. While we did identify the property here in the opportunity name, this is actually where we can start to use some of the autofill capabilities either within Dot Loop or DocuSign. This is going to help the MCAs and the compliance coordinator track these properties once they kind of enter the Winmore system, so you can get tracked and paid, and we know where your commissions are coming from and all that good stuff. So you can add the property by selecting the property pencil to the right. select the country, right? And then as you start to type in, based upon your GPS location, where you're located, it's going to start to try to auto-populate that address. So here you can see there's only so many 6113s within this area. If I'm not seeing anything, I can continue to keep typing it in. Oh, and now there's Greenbrier, there's Green Lawn, there's Greenbrier again, right? There's all these different things that I can select. And then it'll auto-populate everything and I can hit save. If this is a new build, if you're going through a situation where it's a new build, you can actually manually start to type in whatever it is. And if we tab through it, we're not actually selecting anything. If we're tabbing through it, we can go through and select the various pieces of information and then save it, right? This is just if it's a new build, you don't, and it's not actually in there quite yet, you can actually do that. So, but if we go through and we just do the auto population, let's just select one. We'll hit save. Once again, especially if this is a buyer opportunity, this property type may change based upon the transaction or the status of the offer, I guess is a better way of saying it. Seller worksheet, we're not going to cover too much. I mean, this is pretty basic. It's just going to help you kind of see based upon the information their net sheet, basically, right? So they can kind of see what they're going to make versus at the sale of a house in between different offers and various things like that. The last thing I want to point out on this screen is the lost opportunity. This is something you would only check if this opportunity does not lead to a transaction. So in this case, this is a listing opportunity. I have it listed. And then one day Gabby calls me and says, you know what, Josh, you know what, I lost my job. I can't sell my house, or, some tragedy happened, or maybe they're just no longer interested in selling. Maybe they don't like people walking through their house, whatever it is. I would mark it as a lost opportunity because I'm not going to transact with Gabby. I would not mark this as a lost opportunity if Gabby was a buyer and we submitted an offer and that offer did not get accepted. And then we're writing another offer. I do not create another offer or another opportunity for every single offer. I would only mark things as a lost opportunity is if this opportunity is not going to lead to a transaction. It's extremely important to keep this in mind just because this can affect your conversion rate and your numbers as we kind of do goal trackings and things like that in Command. So just be very, very purposeful with this. If you ever need to get rid of an opportunity, say you're creating a test opportunity, you don't want to mark it as lost. If you go to the pipeline and we locate a particular opportunity, we can click the three little dots and we can click archive opportunity. This just basically hides the opportunity. This is what you're going to do for your test opportunities, your fake opportunities, whatever it is. You're going to archive them versus mark them as lost. Hopefully that makes sense. As we move across the top, we're going to see something here called seller profile. So for a listing opportunity, it's going to say seller profile. For a buyer opportunity, it's going to say buyer profile. This is going to be if this particular contact that we have selected is registered with our consumer platform. So this means that they've downloaded our app and we've been selected as the agent. They've registered on our Keller Williams agent website in some form, some fashion. They have tied the consumer platform back to us. And once this is done, we have the ability to assign a guide, a buyer's guide or a seller's guide that's a digital format. We cover this a little bit in our consumer training. So definitely we do a deeper dive with that. But suffice to say, one of the cool things we do give you the ability to do is to create your own digital buyers and sellers guide, which amounts to basically a step-by-step process of like, hey, looking to buy a house, here are the things that you kind of need to do. Hey, looking to sell your house, here are some things that you can do before showing or during the process before someone starts to look at your house, right? Like curb appeal, put the toilet seat down, flush the toilet, more importantly, whatever it is, right? You can create that custom step-by-step checklist for them to kind of check off, and you can kind of see the status of where they are within it. Super cool if you decide to go that route. Documents and offers and commissions. This is where you'll probably spend the majority of your time within an opportunity. If we click on documents, This is where we actually start a transaction. This is where we should go to create our DocuSign room, to create our Dot Loop. And also this is where we will add documents for compliance purposes. So when you first go into an opportunity, it's going to say, hey, you got to select a checklist type first. Over here is your checklist type dropdown. So when we click it, it's going to give us a list of various checklist types. Now, your market center may have a completely different set. In your market center, you may see different checklist items or checklist types. This is market center specific. These have been created by your MCA. If you do not see a checklist type in there that you feel should be there, please reach out to your MCA and talk with them about it, and they can easily create a checklist type. One of the things you cannot have here, though, you can't have Josh's residential checklist or Bobby's residential checklist or whatever it is, right? You can't have your own custom checklist. This is something that's generic and needs to be used across all agents across the market center. So for our purposes, this is a residential listing. I'm going to select residential, and it's going to create the residential checklist, right? So this is what we call our compliance checklist. Over here on the left-hand side, we have different sections of the checklist. Here you can see we're in the listed phase of this checklist, right? And these are all the various documents that I may need to submit to my market center for the compliance coordinator to review as I'm processing a transaction. So in a case for a listing, I can see that, hey, I need to provide them the exclusive right to represent, the consumer guide, the anti-fraud disclosure. Those are required. Conditionally, I may need to provide these. For instance, lead-based paint is a conditional requirement. If I hover my mouse over the eye, it's because only if it was built before 1978. Do these sync with what's in our Dot Loop folders? Great question, Bobby. So these are placeholders, right? So these are placeholders. So these are where you're going to bring documents in. If you start your transaction or your Dot Loop from within the opportunity, absolutely, you'll be able to manually, or you'll be able to like sync these documents over from your loop. That only works if you start the loop from within the opportunity, though. If you've already created a loop and you're using the mobile app, whatever it is, and you're doing all of that, and then later you come to create an opportunity, you will need to manually upload these to the compliance checklist. So just kind of be aware of that. The process of starting a loop within an opportunity isn't hard at all. Once you have Dot Loop connected, when you go to the start a transaction option, you'll select it. If all you have is Dot Loop, start a transaction will immediately create a loop for you and take you into Dot Loop. If you have multiple transaction platforms like I have, you would select Dot Loop. But basically, it's the same thing with DocuSign. Once you create it from within the opportunity, you'll be able to bring those documents directly over into the compliance checklist. All right. And then, of course, you will have, there's also going to be some optional ones on this particular checklist. There aren't any optional ones, but if you have any questions about what anything is, a lot of times reach out to your MCA or your compliance coordinator or your TL or just anyone in your market center leadership, and they should be able to help you figure that out. Super simple, super easy. Depending on the stage of the transaction, right, under contract is going to have its own set of conditional requirements, and closed is going to have its own set. So depending on where you are within the transaction will determine which transaction or which compliance checklist you need to be adding documents to. Once you add all the appropriate documents, you're going to submit to the market center. This is what starts the process for the compliance coordinator to actually go through and review the docs, kick them back if there's any issues, and so on and so forth. One of the things you're going to want to talk to your market center leadership about, especially your MCA and compliance coordinator, is there a minimum number of documents that they want entered before you submit it? Do they want onesie twosies, or do they want the whole thing filled out before you submit for, compliance check? Each market center is run a little bit different, so definitely check with them to see what their preferred method is. The other thing I'll point out real quick over here on the left-hand side is custom folders. So you have the ability to create custom folders. Now, this is going to be tied specifically to this transaction. And when we create a custom folder, right, we click the plus sign, we name the folder, we click on the folder name. This gives us the ability to upload documents directly into the opportunity. Think of this as if there's any documents that you want to keep track of that you feel are important, maybe inspection reports, HOA docs, whatever it is that does not fit within one of these listed checklist items, feel free to create a folder and upload them to your custom folder. One of the really neat things that we have with Command is, unlike all these other e-platforms, right, like Dot Loop or Docusign, most of them have only guaranteed that they'll keep access to your docs for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, whatever it is, right? If you add anything to Command, that you will have access to this data forever, right? As long as you're a KW agent and you have access to Command, you'll be able to go back and reference. So what I love the idea about the custom folders, any handwritten notes, anything like that, that you just want to like keep track of in case there's any question about this transaction later, you can just scan it all in and then just upload it to a custom folder here. Super cool, super simple, super easy. And you can have as many custom folders as you want within reason. I've never seen anyone create more than 10, but I don't know if you'd ever need more than 10. So there might be some top end limit of like 99 folders is the most you can have. But I don't ever think anyone will ever reach that. Super simple. Offers and commissions. So this is where you start the process of getting paid within an opportunity. One of the rules of thumb is you should always, if you can and time allows, add every offer that you ever receive, especially when it comes to a listing, right? It's super simple to add an offer to a opportunity. From the offers and commissions tab, we're going to click add new offer. We're going to name the offer. By default, it's called initial offer. I highly recommend you add additional information, especially if you're adding, multiple offers on a listing. So here, for instance, you can do Bobby Buyer or the agent's name, however you want to identify it. So that way you can kind of differentiate each individual offer. Once we name it, we're just going to click the create offer button. And should create an offer for us. What's going on? Let's try it one more time. There we go. All right. So, and it's just going to quickly walk you through step by step of creating an offer. There's actually only 4 parts to it: offer details, parties, terms, and agent analysis. Super simple, super easy, right? So we have, what's the name of the offer? When was the date of the offer? Was it today? When do we anticipate this offer closing? And then we're going to click parties. And you're going to notice, because it's tied to a contact in Command for the seller side, since this is a listing opportunity, it's already plugged in the pertinent information for us. We have our client's name, their email address, their phone number, and our contact info. The only thing we need to add is the buyer's info, right? So we can add in Bobby Buyer. Only name is required for the buyer. We don't need to put in this additional information. If we do, nothing hurts. It never hurts to add more information. One thing you do want to take advantage of, if you can, is checking the box pre-approved or pre-qualified if you know that. And I'll kind of show you why that's kind of cool a little bit later. And then the associate's name, right? Who is representing the buyer, we'll put in Joe, agent. And then, of course, it's not required to put in his information, but if you have it, you can. It can benefit you a little bit later. Once we have all that filled out, we're just going to click terms. And this is where we just quickly plug in a summary of the terms, right? How much is Bobby offering in cash? Is he offering $10,000 in cash? And you'll notice as I plug in the values here, it starts to total over here. So he's going to pay $10,000 cash, and then he's going to finance $250,000, whatever it is, for a total sales price of $2,600 or $260,000, I should say. Percentage earnest money. Here you can put in a percentage. They paid 1% earnest money or a value, and then kind of will do the math forwards and backwards. This will, depending on where you enter the box, will determine the math, right? If we do 2%, it puts it over here. If we do $1,000, it shows us this is only 0.38% of the sales price. Only this box works that way. You have to put in cash and finance to get a sales price. You can't just enter in a sales price manually up here. If they're paying fully in cash, They're going to put 250,000 in, and then they're going to finance $0. So you just got to make sure that you plug it in there for that total to exist. Option fee will be, is there a transaction fee? Is there some kind of optional fee that has been included? Termination options pretty standard, right? Like, what is the buyer's termination notice within so many days after the contract? So you can adjust that. And then, of course, here you can say, hey, is the buyer asking us as the listing agent, the seller, right, to contribute $400 to a home warranty, or even pay some of their closing costs? We can plug that values in right now as well. And then we're just going to click agent analysis. Now here is a completely optional screen. You can go ahead and just hit save if you want. But what I would recommend, especially if you find yourself in a multiple offer situation, and especially, you know, you have a listing, you may get 30, 40, 50 different offers, who knows, in this market. It would be a great idea to plug in the pros and cons and an overall summary of what you think about this particular offer. And I'll show you a little bit later why, but just kind of want to point this screen out. It is not required, but it can benefit you in the long run if you take the time to fill it out. And then we can hit save. And relatively quickly, right? We just added an offer to command. If we're in multiple offers, we could add additional ones. So we have them all stored within the system, so we're aware of what all of our offers are. And then once we're ready to accept an offer, you know, our client, you know, Gabby, she's decided to accept this offer. I'm just going to go ahead and click accept. If I want to just get rid of the offer entirely, I can reject it. And of course, we click the three little dots. This just gives us the ability to edit it, to send the offer, to remove the offer, just to do different things, right? But typically, we're either going to accept it or reject it. If we accept it, now we have a different screen. Now we have the ability to either change our response or manage our commission. If we need to accept a different offer, we would change our response. If we go to manage commission, this is where we have the ability to actually go through and plug in our data to submit our commission to the market center to get paid. So we'll quickly kind of walk through this box. You'll notice under general information, we have our sales price, our commission rate, what our total commission is, our units, our contract date, our close date. If any of this information is incorrect, we can edit the general information, because keep in mind, a lot of this was pulled from when we initially started plugging in the opportunity. If the sales price was raised or lowered, or if my commission was adjusted, maybe I ended up having to go to 2.25%, I can plug that in here, and you'll notice it does the total directly. Same thing, if I do, they're just going to pay me $5,000. Now it's just a 2% commission. That math works backwards and forwards, right? Here we can see the total units, update the contract date and or the close date if I need to, and I can hit save those changes. When I make those changes, it actually instantly does some calculation. So here on the payment side, we can see a quick breakdown of what we're seeing, like what we're going to get paid within this transaction. So for instance, I have, you know, one unit, my gross commission is going to be $56.25. My net pay is going to be $3,600, and this would be the payment date, right? So you're going to see a quick breakdown. So here's the total GCI. Here's what I paid in royalty. Here's what I paid in company dollar. Did I add any to E&O, Bold Scholarship, KW Cares, whatever it is, and then I have net to agent. You'll notice this will actually kind of help you keep track of where you are within paying your royalty and your company cap, right? So think about this. This is just a guide, not a rule of thumb. So what I mean by that is, this is going to be an estimate on how close you are to capping. This is not going to be 100% accurate. It's just going to kind of give you an indicator of where you are. The reason is, ultimately, all of that is tracked within WinMore and then is finalized during transmittal at the end or the beginning of each month, depending on how you view it. So don't always think that this indicates you are in fact capping. If you have questions on how close you are to capping, you can definitely go to your MCA and they can pull a report. Tara asks, can you add referral fees such as realtor.com? You absolutely can. That's going to be the next thing we're going to talk about. So great segue. So now let's say we do want to add as Tara mentioned, a referral fee, or is it Tara? I don't know if it's Tara or Tara. I can never tell. But if you want to add something to Bold Scholarship or KW Cares, or if you want to pay a referral fee, this is where we can click Edit Agent Payment. So when we do this, here is where we can make some adjustments to our commission as well. We can add to the Bold Scholarship, KW Cares, all that good stuff. And then down at the bottom, we have extra payment options. Here's where we can do referrals, bonuses, deductions, concessions, etc. We're going to go ahead and click Add Item. Then we're going to have a couple options here. Now, what I would ask is every market center is a little bit different. So when you do have to add a referral fee, if this is your first time, definitely talk to your MCA and make sure you're putting it in the right place, because sometimes every MCA is a little bit different how they want that handled. But typically, the rule of thumb is, the general rule is, if you want to do a referral fee, you're going to drop this down. You're going to select outside referral. We're going to plug in that referral percentage. So let's say it's Op City and I owe them a 30% referral fee, right? It does the amount for us. Tax type, EIN, right? I can plug that in, whatever it is. I can plug in the information, right? Typically, there's an Op City. I don't remember exactly what they want you, what Op City request that they put in there. But then the address of, that you're actually sending the check to, whatever it is, and then a phone number. And then if there's an email, then you click Add. So now you're going to see the outside referral exists here, and we can save those changes. And now when we look at our summary, we're going to see, hey, here's our total commission coming in. And then the outside referral comes right off the top. And then what we pay to the office, containing our royalty and commission, and then what we ultimately make. With this as well, when you edit agent payments, this is where you can add in any concessions or deductions, or any inside referral fees or any potential bonuses as well. If you are working a deal and you're splitting this between two agents, this is where you can add another agent. And then this will give you a list of all the agents within your particular market center. Right? So I could say, hey, I'm splitting this with Rachel. Is she getting part of the units? Is she getting part of the commission? Whatever it is. And then we can kind of go through and put in her statistics as well. Once we're completely happy, everything checks out with the summary. If we need to add any specific note to our MCA, go ahead and fill this in and then just hit submit. And then your commission has now been submitted. Now, I'm not actually going to submit it because I'm tied to real market centers and it can just confuse their numbers and just the staff as a whole. So I try not to create more work because they're busy enough as it is. But super simple, super easy, and a super visual representation, right? So a couple things just to remember with this: make sure all the math adds up right before you hit submit. You can add your referral fees. You can pay other agents within your market center. You can split your commission through that. You can donate to KW Kids Care, Kids Can, Bold Scholarship, all that good stuff. Yeah, super simple process. Now, the last two things we'll talk about quickly in opportunities, as we kind of get towards the tail end of the class, is the notes and the timeline. So the notes section is just going to be for you to offer any notes regarding this transaction. So you do have a notes section within a contact card, but you have a notes section within an opportunity. The rule of thumb is this: notes you add that are about building the relationship with your client, you're going to add that to the notes contact, the notes within the contact. Anything pertinent to the transaction, maybe something like that you want to remember later, you would add as a note to the opportunity. Think of the notes within an opportunity. If you've been selling real estate for any length of time, a lot of agents used to have those manila folders that they would walk around with all their transaction docs. They would handwrite notes on the inside and outside and all over on those folders. Think of that as this, where you can add some long-term information that you want to remember. Timeline. This is just going to be a running timeline of everything that's happened within this opportunity. It takes a little bit to load because it's trying to load every single transaction. So here you can actually see when the checklist type was changed to residential, when a custom folder was created, when an offer was added, when an offer was accepted, when we added a commission. I mean, it tracks every little step of what goes on within an opportunity for our compliance and tracking purpose. Just so if you ever, especially if you're on a team and you want to know who did what, you have that ability to do to track that. Super simple, super easy. Now, the other quick thing I want to talk about within opportunities, as we've kind of gone through the details, let's actually talk about some of the neat things you can do within opportunities. So here I'm back in the pipeline, right? So I have my phases, and then if I dive into a particular opportunity, let's go into active, for instance, I can see these various stages. Now, these stages are important because as we move an opportunity through the pipeline, typically the rule of thumb is there's multiple stages within a phase of a transaction, right? So under the active phase, I have staging, showing, negotiations. And then you're going to notice to the right of each stage is a percentage. This is my conversion percentage that I've tracked, that I know once I get a listing, for instance, to the showing stage, I have a 70% chance to close that deal. That's where that probable potential income comes in. If you notice down at the bottom of each stage, based upon what I have plugged in here, I have a $10,000 potential commission. Probably, because I have a 70% conversion rate, I'm probably going to make $7,000. But potentially, if I close it 100% just based off this one, I could make 10, right? And it's just doing the averages of what's ever within that particular stage. One of the neat things we can do, though, is we can customize our stages within a phase. Super simple, right? If I click edit stages when I'm in a particular phase, so I say I'm in active right now, if I click edit stages, I can see a list of all the stage names. If I want to delete one, I can click the trash can to the right. If I want to edit a stage name or a probability, I can click the pencil and I can change the name of the stage and or the probability of closing. And more importantly, if I want to add a checklist to this, I can do that as well. So one of the neat things we can really start to do when we think about tracking stuff within an opportunity is checklist items. So when I click checklist and I click 0 of 0, I can actually add an item and say during staging, send schedule photographer, right? And I can hit save. So now what this basically does is it creates a checklist item that if I go back and let me move something over here. So here I have my opportunity here that's in the appointment phase. I left click the 6 little dots. I drag it to the active phase, right? You can see it turns green. This now has appeared under staging. You'll notice that I have some checklist items to check off. I can click on it and I can say, hey, I scheduled the photographer. And now this is 1 of 1. And then once I'm ready to move over into showing, I can drag this over to the showing stage. And now I have a new set of checklist items where I can sit there and say, oop, I need to put the lockbox on door, put the for sale sign in yard. And as I'm going through, I'm completing each step of that transactional phase within that stage. So what's important about this? What's exciting about this? Well, if you take the time to build out your individual transaction stages and checklist items, you guarantee that you'll provide the same level of quality of care to each client. You won't miss anything. Now, it takes a little bit of time, right? You have to go into each individual phase. You have to edit the stages, decide which stages you want, and then add those individual checklist items. But going forward, those checklist items will be applied to any opportunity when it enters that stage. Super, super cool. If you're thinking about building a team, or maybe you are a rainmaker and you're on a team, these allow you to build a consistent level of service that you can provide to each of your clients. You know, what I really love about this, especially, is if you're thinking of bringing on a transaction coordinator and they're going to log in and start doing stuff within command. I like it that if you've already have the transaction process built out, that transaction coordinator doesn't have to ask you what do I do next. They're just going to ask you questions about checklist items. So they know what they need to do. Now they may need some training and coaching on what does this mean? How do I accomplish this task? And I love those questions versus I love how do I do something versus what do I do, right? To me, that's always a more purposeful conversation. Super, super cool. One of the neat things you can see within opportunity checklist, though, especially if we edit a stage, go to a checklist item, you're going to notice there's this option to do a client update that we can turn off and on, and it puts a little email to the right of that. What that basically will do is as I complete, oops, let me go back. As I complete various checklist items, if they have that email, the next day, Command's going to take a list of everything that I completed the previous day regarding one singular opportunity, and it's going to email that to the seller and or buyer. So what's kind of cool about the client update is this allows you to keep your buyer and or seller informed if you choose to do so. This allows you to keep them informed on what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. It will not send an email saying you didn't do anything. If you didn't check any boxes off on the previous day, it just will not send an email. But it's just a way to kind of keep them in the loop on the day-to-day business of what you're doing to sell their property, what you're doing to help them find a property, whatever makes the most sense in your regard. Typically, it's not going to prevent them from calling you and having a conversation, but hopefully it'll be more purposeful when you do have those conversations. In addition to creating a universal checklist, right, when you edit the stages, you also have the ability to add one-offs. So here, if I have Buckman and I've listed with Mickey, if I click on the checklist items, if I go down to the very bottom and say there's something unique that I need to do for Mickey in this stage, I can quickly add that item, whatever it is, check property for my mouse traps. Right? And then maybe I want to include that as a client update to Mickey so he knows when I do that, he gets an email the next day that I did do that. I could set a due date in a particular in the future if I want and hit save. And now I have this set up to check the property for mouse traps. Then once I complete it, I can check it off. If at any given point, I don't want that to go to Mickey as a client update, I can just uncheck that box. Or if I have something that later I do in a one-off basis, I want this to go as a client update, I can easily check it. And just whenever I check it off, in that next email, they'll get it. Remember, it's not individual emails for everything you do. It's just going to be one giant email that they will actually be able to kind of see what you've done. If you're interested in turning that on and off, you'll notice how it says client updates are on, client updates are off. If I want Mickey to receive it, when I'm in the actual opportunity, if I click client updates in the upper right-hand corner, this is where I can turn it on and say, hey, when do I want this to go out? I can add additional people to receive this. And then I can just save those changes. Super simple, and now client updates are on. We're kind of getting to the tail end of the class, so there is just one last thing that I want to show you that I think is super, super cool. We had talked previously about when you're adding in your analysis, right? You're doing your offer, you're doing your pros and your cons for each individual offer, right? Why would you go through and do that? Well, one of the cool things you can do if you go through and you take the time to add that information into Command, especially when you're in those multiple offer situations, you can go into an opportunity. When you go to your offers and commissions, when you have one or more offers added, you're going to have a new button that says, hey, compare offers. You can then go through and select all or individual offers. But when you select two or more offers, you're going to be able to click compare offers. And when you do, it's actually going to lay out all those offers side by side. So here you have a visual representation on what they're offering, what they're financing, what the earnest money is, what the summaries that you've plugged in, and if they're pre-approved or pre-qualified, right? If you took the time to check those boxes, if you took the time to put in the pros and cons, you kind of have it all laid out. So here you can see this is an all cash offer. They don't need any closing costs, but they need a longer closing date. And then you can email the offer comparison to your client. So in this case, it's going to go to the email address of the client we have associated with the opportunity. And if we preview it, this is what the client will see. An email that basically compares all the offers side by side. Now, what's great about this is a couple things. First and foremost, you send them something visually that they can look at while you're talking to them on the phone. This does not preclude you from calling them or meeting with them and walking through each offer. This is just a visual representation as you're going through from offer to offer to offer. They can see it. Second, that's super cool about this. If you take the time to plug in your pros and cons, sometimes you may accept an offer, but that financing falls through and you need to go to that backup offer or what was the next best offer. If you took the time to identify it, you very well could easily go through and find that next best offer versus cycling through all the different emails or previous contracts or whatever it is. That way you can easily and quickly reach out to Betty's agent to see if Betty's still interested, right? Super cool. The third thing this allows you to do, and probably the most important thing, so I saved it for last, it gives you a repeatable, provable way to share offers without any bias. One of the things y'all need to be aware of in this market, we are definitely seeing this happen more and more and more. Buyers are suing everyone when their offer doesn't get accepted. Some buyers are like, hey, I wrote $30,000 above asking. I didn't ask for any inspections. How did my offer not get accepted? You must have not presented it. Or even worse, they think it wasn't accepted because of their race, their sexual identity, their religion, whatever it is, right? They're going to say, oh, they didn't accept my offer because I'm this. That's why they didn't accept my offer. Not knowing that the offer that was accepted was $100,000 above asking and they're given a kidney. So when you present your offers this way, and you have a repeatable, provable way that you share your offers without bias, if there's ever a question, you can always go back to these emails. You can always present these emails to the MLS. You can always talk to the judge, however far it goes, and say, hey, this is how I present all my offers. It's ultimately, I present everything equal in an unbiased fashion, and then my clients decide who they want to go with. So just kind of throwing that out there, especially in the market that we have right now, where there's just such a frenzy for a single house, just kind of keep that in mind. We kind of ran about 2-3 minutes over, so I apologize for that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Any questions, concerns, criticisms, compliments? Oh, sure. Great question, Bobby. So the biggest difference between a contact in your personal command versus a contact in your team command is how you create the opportunity. So let's say, for instance, you're a rainmaker on a team, right? You're the rainmaker and you have agents that are on your team. If you want to be able to see the opportunities they're creating, if you're running all those opportunities through the team, the contact has to live within the team. They can't have a personal contact and create a team opportunity. Remember, opportunities have to be tied to a contact, and opportunities can only be tied to contacts within their ecosystem. So team opportunities have to have team contacts. Personal opportunities live in with personal contacts. That's going to be the biggest, differentiating factor. Now, in most cases, a team, if you're on a team, you should load all your contacts into the team, especially if you do it through command. If you're an agent who's on a team and you're working with a rainmaker, those contacts will always be your contacts. You will have maintained ownership of them. While the rainmaker can see those contacts, as long as everything is set up correctly within the team, only the rainmaker or their director of ops will be able to view your contacts. And in addition to that, no other agents on the team can kind of view those contacts, if that kind of makes sense. But the one caveat I always tell people with that, especially before you start adding your contacts to a team account, definitely make sure you have that conversation with the rainmaker. What happens if I leave the team? What happens if I leave? Or if you're a rainmaker, always have that conversation with people that are joining your team it's weird to say, but the first conversation you should ever ask when you join business with someone, you get into business with someone, what happens if we want to get out of business with each other? That's the first conversation you should have. So that way it's clear from the very beginning that, hey, I take the contacts I brought in, the contacts or the leads that I generated while I was on the team, live with the team, some version of that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So if I'm working with a rainmaker and he's got 1,800 contacts in his personal database, do we need to create opportunities? Do I need to reassign those into the team for him to follow the opportunities?
100%. Yeah. If he wants to, and it's super easy to move contacts from personal command to a team. It's super easy. But yes, if he wants all the opportunities to live within the team, and that way, when you're in a team, one of the cool things you can do within opportunities, you can kind of see, especially if you're a rainmaker, you can see everyone's opportunities. So you can kind of see that pipeline of what all the potential GCI for the team is. 100%. They all need to be moved to the team, and then opportunities are created within the team, if that makes sense.
Makes sense. I don't know why I'm struggling so much with keeping this idea straight, but
no, there's just, it's because it's a lot. There's a lot of moving parts sometimes. The one thing to keep in mind though, once you move a personal contact from personal command to team command, it does break some things. So for instance, if those contacts are on smart plans within his personal command, when you move them to the team, they will need to be set back up on smart plans again. You can download the same smart plans, but smart plans don't transfer between personal and team command and vice versa, if that makes sense.
yeah, okay.
So just be aware of that. But what I'll do is as well, let me throw my email address in the chat. If you need further clarification, sometimes the team stuff can be a little more involved with command. We just definitely reach out to me. We can schedule a separate Zoom where we can kind of do a deep dive. And if you have any pertinent questions, we kind of just go through it step by step to make sure you're comfortable with how team command works.
Yep, I have one scheduled next Thursday.
Oh, perfect. Then that's, I tell people, like, at this point with my life, I don't know what I have in the future. I just wake up in the morning, look at my calendar, but oh, okay, this is what I got to do today. So perfect. I'm looking forward to that then.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Anything else before we sign off? Anyone have any other questions, concerns, criticisms, compliments? I know I'm an amazing teacher, and I'm doing it from California, people. But wait, that's the Golden Gate Bridge, right? I don't know anything. I've never left Ohio. Perfect. Well, if you guys need anything, let me know. This has been recorded and this will get posted to our regional YouTube within a week. If you want to go back and watch it again, as always, my email's in the chat. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or your Market Center leadership. Thank you all so much for attending. I greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.